We're back on The Big Show. It's Alex Belfield talking to my favourite people and the biggest stars, and we've got one here today. Wendi Peters, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Alex. Lovely to be here.
Well, it's nice to meet you because you're one of those people that you watch on telly for years and years and years and you think you get to know. But of course, certainly with Coronation Street, you're a character and it's not really you, but you're so known for that role. How do you feel at this point, a year out of it? Is that still a good thing or a bad thing?
It's definitely a mixture. And I did, when Out of Africa came up and Gavin phoned me up, it sounded like a fantastic idea, obviously, but I had to sort of put the phone down and say, OK, I really need to think about this, because it was my decision to move on and try and leave Cilla behind a little. Not that I ever want people to forget about her, because I'm very grateful to her, because she's raised my profile as an actress and I'm very, very lucky for the job I had. But I wanted to try and move on and do other things. Be it more similar to me or more serene or something different. And I thought, oh gosh, do I really want to go back and play this awful woman again and, have her in the forefront? So I did a pros and cons list. I actually sat down with a pad and went, okay, pros, cons. 3 weeks in South Africa, quite nice. Going back to do Cilla, whatever. And work with Andy and Jenny. And in the end, the pros did outweigh the cons. To work with Andy and Jenny and Sam again and work with Gav and Duncan, it was great. And the biggest thing for me was it was a DVD. It wasn't going back into the main show, so it wasn't going to be on 5 nights a week. It is a one-off. And I just saw it for me as not a goodbye to her, because never say never. Who knows in a few years' time whether she will come back. But for now, just to round her off, and what a lovely way to do it. How lucky am I? And
she's one of those people that we grow to love. She's evil, nasty, vindictive. And it is priorities, isn't it? Vegas, Chesney. No, I'll go to Vegas.
Absolutely. Unfortunately with Cilla, it's always the pound signs. If the money comes into it, she will always take the money.
The thing I love most about Cilla was the tan.
Yes.
I mean, just brilliant. But there are some people that say, oh, I'm not prepared to do that. You really did give yourself over to her, which is such an amazing thing.
Well, I just think, what I do, it's a job. And I've, obviously before Corrie, I'd spent 15 years as a jobbing actress doing lots and lots of different things, making myself look, as stupid, if not more in some things than that. I never see it as me. And even watching the DVD, I don't watch it and go, oh, what do I look like? Because it's not me up there, it's Cilla. That's the big difference.
And let's talk about your life, because you've had such an amazing career before Coro, and of course everybody forgets about that and they're not interested because this is all that matters because it's on TV. But you've worked so hard in the past. Tell us some of the things you've done.
When I first left college at sort of 19, 20, I did lots of musicals. That's what I always... As being a little girl, I grew up watching the old films, all the Gene Kellys, the Fred Astaire's, Judy Garland's, and that's what I was desperate to do. So I went to musical theatre college and I came out and I did lots and lots of musicals on tour and in rep. Gypsy, Grease, Into the Woods, lots of Sondheim. I love Sondheim. And that's how I started out in my career, really, singing and being in shows. And I loved it for about 8 or 10 years. And then I suddenly decided I wanted to do something else. It was always sort of a plan, if you can have a plan in this business. That I loved doing comedy and I wanted to move into TV. And that's the transition sort of happened, going from musicals into comedies, into straight plays in theatre. And I was very lucky. A playwright who, well, everybody knows him, John Godber, gave me a really good chance. He cast me in a Hull Truck Theatre Company tour of teachers, a three-hander, and it was my first sort of thing out of musicals, and he gave me that break, really. He took a chance on me for somebody who'd been a twirly all her life and gave me the chance to show that I could do something else. So I always thank him for that. And that sort of led to lots of little bits in television, Out of the Blue, a police series and Cardiac Arrest. I did a film. I was very lucky to do a film. I did a film called In Love and War. Not, if you blink, you miss me in it. It literally is that. But I got to sit in a makeup chair next to Sandra Bullock, and she actually turned to me and introduced herself to me like I didn't know who she was. But I thought that was great of her. And I always make a point now of doing that when I meet people, because you can't assume that people know who you are. Not everybody watches Corrie. So I always make hi, I'm Wendi. Who, and they will say, I am. But I did that, and Richard Attenborough directed it. To watch Richard Attenborough on a film set for 3 weeks working was just unbelievable. So lots of bits and pieces. And then I suppose the big thing breaking TV for me was Bad Girls. I did a few episodes of Bad Girls as Podger Pam. And as you were saying, Alex, I don't mind how I look. Now, if you ever watch that episode on DVD, you'll know that I really don't mind how I look. They put me in a huge fat suit and actually took makeup off. I went to the studio with a little bit of mascara and a bit of lipstick, and they went, no, it all has to come off. Let's paint some spots on. So I really don't care. But it was a great opportunity. I always think whatever you're doing, there'll always be someone who'll see it. And maybe, hopefully, in the back of their minds, they'll put it there and think of you for other things.
When you go from something like a Broadway musical into a three-hander like Teachers, how does that feel? Do you suddenly feel very exposed? Because there's a lot to cover you, the big band, the big scenery, the big numbers, the big set. When you're doing plays, it's a completely different level, isn't it? Completely.
And I found it hard. I found the 3 weeks rehearsals really hard. And, you know, John really had to sort of not struggle with me, but we had to pull me back because it is a completely different thing, as is with telly. And then I play an over-the-top character like Cilla. Okay, but it was hard to pull back. But within Teachers, you were playing lots of different characters. So there was scope then to bring out the musical theatre side, you know, in the headmistress or in different characters. But the actual playing the pupils was really just to wipe everything clean and just be very real.
Did you always get the personality roles, the roles that stuck out, or were you in the chorus? Because everything you've done since on TV has been a unique role that we remember.
I started out in the chorus, obviously, like lots of people do, being chorus and understudy. But the thing is, I never really looked like anybody else. I was always slightly larger. I remember I did a tour of Guys and Dolls with Barbara Windsor, who obviously I've seen a lot since. I didn't look like any of the other girls. They were all very slim and very tall. And I actually got picked out because I looked so different and got a lovely review for saying, the outsized, killjoy. And it's like, oh, but in a way, that's always quite a good thing to be different. But it did hold me back, even within musicals, because they wouldn't cast me because I wasn't that normal chorus line. But then I sort of got lots of character parts in musicals. I played Jan in Grease, Red Riding Hood in Into the Woods. So it was always the character based, and it was always sort of the young teenage roles. And I think my main choice then to go on and do other things was the fact that I got too old to play the teenager, and I wasn't old enough then to play the character roles that I wanted to play in musicals then. So, hopefully in the next sort of 10 years, there are a couple of roles that I would really like to go back to musicals and do.
Let's talk about Cilla and how you got that role. How was that pitched to you? How much of you was in her and your influence in your opinion?
Well, the actual character of Cilla was pitched on a piece of A4 and literally a breakdown. That's all you're sent to your agent when you're up for this part. When I read it, I could see her. I saw it on the page, and I knew that she was going to be Fizz's mom. That was, so you hadn't, having watched Corrie for a long time, I knew the character of Fizz and had an idea. But the breakdown said she was warm, she was cheery, she liked a good pint, and she liked a good fish and chip supper. So I had an idea. Oh heck, I might be all right for this, being slightly larger. But the main thing was she was going to be a fun character as a new girlfriend for Les Battersby. It wasn't. There was no evilness to her. I knew she had another son. I knew she had a son called Chesney, but there was no evilness to her. So I sort of went in very cheery with the script, and I did dress up, I have to say. I've never ever dressed up for an audition in my life. But when you get a casting through for Corrie, you go, well, hey, I've only got one chance at this, really.
When you say you dressed up, did you dress up or dress down, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Half and half. I dressed up in the respect that I put a very short skirt on and a very low-cut top, and I stuffed my bra with my socks. And I put as much gold jewellery as I could find on, because that's how I saw her, At the time, there was that programme, that Wife Swap had just come out, and there was a lady on it, she's a real person, a lady on it called Lizzie, Bardsley, I think her surname is. And I saw her, and I thought, I might take some elements of that, because I can, having read it, I thought that could be part of Cilla. And so I dressed up and tottered in, and I put on Cilla's voice. Ashamedly, I just went in with my thickest Lancashire accent, which I drew from somewhere, having been brought up there. I never had such a thick accent, but it sort of has gone over the 20 years I've been in London. You hope people can see further, but you just thought, what if they don't? What if they meet Wendi and just go, she's nothing like Cilla? That's not what we're after. So I thought, right, the only way I can do it is to go in as Cilla.
Are there particular lines even now you remember that you think that's a corker?
I remember there was a scene once, and I was literally just sat at the dining room table in a shocking pink top with feathers in my hair, talking about how as a child when Fizz was a child, I'd left her in some bingo club behind the bar in a pram with a packet of crisps and something else. And it was a Jonathan Harvey script, and it was just brilliant. And I remember us just reading it at the read-through, and all of us just breaking down and saying, I can't believe we're going to do this scene. And there are things that you do remember. I think a lot with Cilla as well, a lot of it is visual. People always will say to me, oh, do you remember that time the bath fell through the ceiling? There's always that one. And oh, do you remember the wedding and the quo? And they were verging on farce. And I think that's what they were meant to be. And people do have a go at episodes, and people have had a go, about the wedding and say, oh, it was too far-fetched. Well, you know what? It was meant to be. It was meant to be half an hour of fun that you could take out of Corrie, and I think that's how what the DVD's all about as well, really. If you're expecting some serious dramatic storyline, you're not going to get it with Cilla, Fizz, Chesney and Kirk, are you?
And then you turn up at Coronation Street in the same kind of way, having to get into this rigmarole every day, in much the same way Paul talks about Lily Savage.
Yeah.
How was it for you getting Cilla on? Did you, in the end, dread that, or was it still fun?
No, it was still fun each day going and say, oh, what can we do today? It does become a bit of a chore. Everybody else can walk into the dressing room, put their top on and walk into makeup and go. It took me 20 minutes in my dressing room putting all the jewellery on and getting into costume before I even went to makeup. But it still was great fun. And that thing of, walking into the green room every day and people going, oh my God, what has she come as today? Could that get any shorter? Could it get any tighter? It was great.
And that feeling when you walk in the green room and there's that person you've been watching for 20 years and there's that person, Ken, you've been watching for 40 years.
Oh, scary. My first day, when I went into the green room, I wasn't actually on set. I'd gone in for a costume fitting. So I didn't have to worry about lines or actually doing anything. I could just literally sit there and go try some frocks on. But it was, you sit down on a sofa. And again, the thing with Corrie is everybody is so, and it's a big cliche, it's a big family and they're very friendly, but they are. And people make a point of coming up and introducing themselves again. Hi, I'm Bill Roach. Yeah, I know. Hi, hello, Ken. But they did. I remember sitting on the sofa and sitting next to me, Bill Roach and Eileen Derbyshire, who plays Emily. And they were just so lovely and so welcoming. And it's a brilliant thing because it's a day I remember, my first day, of them doing that to me. So it made me, every time somebody new came into the green room, I did exactly the same thing. And that's how it works. People are lovely to you and you remember that. So on other people's first day, you go and say hello to them.
Brian Clough once said in an interview that people will never remember what you say to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, completely.
And it's so true, isn't it?
Completely. And everybody is so welcoming there.
And you were there at a good time because you got to be there in the legend generation. Obviously, it's been going a long time now, and a lot of them are going, leaving, or in some cases through illness, having to leave.
I know. Unfortunately, we are. Although Rita and Norris seem to have been a bit more prominent in the last few months, which is great because they're two of my favourite in the cabin. But they are all so lovely and such great stories to tell. Barbara Knox plays Rita was fantastic because within sort of 3 weeks of being there, I was thrown into the storyline where, she'd supposedly hit Chesney and I took her to court. And that was amazing to work with someone who'd been there such a long time and was such, part of the furniture and had so much to give and so much to teach. And I learnt so much. It is amazing working with the people who make the show.
And then, of course, you were there during the Les Battersby years.
Yeah.
And Bruce recently did a documentary with Piers. How personally do you take that when one of your members of the cast is being so harassed by the papers?
I think the thing about being in Corrie is, yes, you may be harassed by the press. People may follow you. I've been very lucky because I don't have any stories. I don't have any dishes in me. There's no dirt to dig on me. And I also, I have a family and I'm settled, so I'm not out there, clubbing and doing all that. But I will say that when you take on a job like Corrie, you're going to be thrown into the public eye. And I feel that because of that, you have to learn to behave how you should behave. And if that means you don't go out an awful lot to big clubs or pubs or whatever, that is how your life has to be. it was very sad what happened to Bruce. That's unfortunately the producers took that decision, and it wasn't a great decision for him, unfortunately. But fingers crossed, he'll fight back and he'll move on to other things.
Do you think you're able to say that now because of your age and experience and wisdom in the business? It must be very hard for a kid who's coming into that show at 18
Absolutely.
to become one of the most famous people in the country on the #1 programme, and suddenly have all of that thrust upon them and not have the experience of talking to people who've gone through it. It's really hard being on a soap like that, especially for the kids, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think that is the big difference. Like I said, I mean, I've lived my life. My God, I'm only 40. I've gone through all that. I've been lucky, to meet my husband and date and do all those kind of things without being in the public eye. But it is hard if you're 18 to be thrown into that show, and you're a teenager still. You want to have fun. You want to go out and make friends and go for drinks and do whatever teenagers do. And that, unfortunately, is when they will follow you. So there are sort of ways around it, but you just have to be a bit careful and clever. But it is hard for an 18-year-old.
To bring this whole thing full circle, Back to Africa, which is the new DVD that's out now, did you really have to consider whether you wanted to do this? Because basically it's a DVD about you, isn't it? Which is fantastic. What a compliment for them to ask you to reinvent your character for something that's got their name on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, if it is very flattering for them, for me to think that they think the character of Cilla, along with Chesney, Fizz and Kirk, can hold the screen for 90 minutes. Yeah, really is. And I was absolutely thrilled. And I did, but to be honest, I did have to think about it, because as an actress, I've got the next, hopefully, 40 years to think about. I'm not intending to retire, and I want to carry on working. So I have to think ahead. But it was a lovely thing to be asked to do. I mean, this is only the third one they've made of the DVDs. And the other ones that were Curly and Raquel and Jack and Vera. So to be put in the bracket of those characters is amazing. And it's a lovely showreel to have as well, isn't it?
It is, but what a great compliment about your character and what you've brought to it, because I think they can give you the greatest lines in the world, but if you can't deliver them, they're pointless. And that's what you brought to it. You did make it your own, and I think we're all very sad when you left, because there are fewer and fewer personalities in the media generally anyway, let alone in soaps. And we love people like you, and let's hope they don't ever lose people like Cilla in Coro or people like Blanche, because that's the reason, certainly for me, I tune in.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes Coronation Street stand out from any of the other soaps. That you do, these characters do stand out. Be it Blanche or Norris, or unfortunately no Jack or Vera now. Well, Jack's still there occasionally, not very often though, is he?
No, I don't see him very much at all.
No, so and I think hopefully the younger characters, will move into that, like Kirk and Fizz. They'll move into that bracket, and so it is one thing that I think does make Corrie stand out from the others.
Very, very finally, did they ever say, Wendy, just hold back a bit with Cilla?
Probably a couple of directors said yes, and I took it on board, but look, it still happened as it did. That's one thing I was very aware of out in South Africa with Duncan, the director. Every day I'd say to him, you will pull me back, you will, because having not done it for 9 months, you don't know what's going to come out on the first day. It's hard to find a level and place it just right. And I was very much aware of that with him. And he promised me every day. Having watched it back, I'm not sure whether there are a couple of moments I'd have gone, oh, goodness me, that's just too much. But on the whole, I don't think she's too over the top.
I can't believe they put a wheelchair and Chesney together in the same thing.
Isn't it just awful? When they turn that corner and he's in that wheelchair, you go, oh no, what's she done?
There's elements of Peter Kay tragedy there, isn't there?
Yeah. Maybe we could release a CD for Christmas.
There's an idea. Yeah. He'd do that as well, I'm sure he would. Wendy, great to talk to you. It's lovely to meet you, because you're such a big star, and congratulations with the future. And the new DVD from Coronation Street is in your stores now. It's called Out of Africa. Wendy, thank you so much for talking to me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Alex.